Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode. And today we are going over Singapore. Enjoy. Marina Bay Sands. Marina Bay Sands is a major integrated resort and architectural landmark in Singapore. It is famous for its three tall hotel towers connected at the top by the distinctive Sands Sky Park, which includes a famous infinity pool. The complex opened in 2010 and includes a hotel, casino, convention center, shopping mall, restaurants, theaters, and an observation deck. Its distinctive design has made it one of Singapore's most recognizable landmarks. Sentosa. Sentosa is a resort island and major tourist destination. Located just off the southern coast of Singapore, it is known for its beaches, attractions, hotels, restaurants, and entertainment facilities. The island is home to attractions such as Universal Studios Singapore, SEA Aquarium, and the Sentosa Cable Car. Sentosa was formerly known as Pulau Belakang Mati and was used for military purposes before being redeveloped as a leisure destination. Merlion. The Merlion is a famous national symbol of Singapore, featuring a creature with a lion's head and fish's body. The fish body represents Singapore's origins as a fishing village, while the lion head refers to the traditional story behind the name Singapore, meaning Lion City. The original Merlion statue was designed by Lim Nang Seng and unveiled in 1972. The best-known statue stands at Merlion Park, overlooking Marina Bay. Lawrence Wong. Lawrence Wong is a Singaporean politician who became the fourth Prime Minister of Singapore on May 15th, 2024. Before becoming Prime Minister, he held several senior government positions, including Minister for Finance and Minister for Education. He also served as co-chair of Singapore's COVID-19 Ministerial Task Force during the pandemic. Wong is a member of the People's Action Party and succeeded Lee Hsien Loong as Prime Minister. Gardens by the Bay. Gardens by the Bay is a large nature park in central Singapore, located beside Marina Bay. It is famous for its towering super trees, which are vertical structures covered with plants and fitted with solar technology. The park also contains the Flower Dome and Cloud Forest, two huge climate-controlled conservatories featuring plants from around the world. Gardens by the Bay opened in 2012 as part of Singapore's plan to become a city in a garden. Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew was a Singaporean politician who served as the country's first Prime Minister from 1959 to 1990. He led Singapore through self-government, its separation from Malaysia in 1965, and its transformation into a highly developed global city-state. Lee was a founding member of the People's Action Party, which has governed Singapore since 1959. His government emphasized economic development, education, public housing, infrastructure, and a strong effective state, while also imposing significant restrictions on political opposition and civil liberties. British Singapore. British Singapore refers to the period when Singapore was under British colonial rule, primarily from 1819 to 1963, with interruptions during the Japanese occupation from 1942 to 1945. Stamford Raffles established a British trading settlement there in 1819, and Singapore later became part of the Straits Settlements. Its location made it a major international port and trading center, attracting migrants and merchants from across Asia and beyond. Singapore was occupied by Japan during World War II, before British rule returned in 1945. British colonial rule ultimately ended as Singapore joined Malaysia in 1963, before becoming an independent country in 1965. Hawker Centre. A hawker centre is a large communal food court found throughout Singapore, with many independent stalls selling affordable meals and snacks. Hawker centres developed from Singapore's earlier street food culture, with the government moving many street hawkers into organised centres during the 20th century. They offer a wide variety of cuisines, including Chinese, Malay, Indian, and other Southeast Asian foods. Famous dishes include Hainanese chicken rice, laksa, char kway teow, and satay. Little India. Little India is a historic neighborhood in Singapore known for its South Asian culture, colorful shophouses, temples, restaurants, and shops. The area developed during the 19th century as Indian communities became established in Singapore. One of its most prominent landmarks is the Sri Veeramakaliamman Temple, dedicated to the Hindu goddess Kali. Little India is also home to Tekka Centre, a popular market and food centre. The Japanese occupation. The Japanese occupation of Singapore lasted from 1942 to 1945 during World War II. Japanese forces captured Singapore from the British after the fall of Singapore on February 15, 1942, and renamed the city Seonanto. The occupation was marked by shortages, forced labor, repression, and violence, including the Suk Ching massacre, in which many Chinese civilians were killed. The British returned after Japan surrendered in 1945, ending Japanese rule in Singapore. Alliance with Malaysia. The Singapore-Malaysia Alliance generally refers to Singapore's political relationship with Malaysia, especially the period when Singapore was part of the Malaysian Federation. Singapore joined Malaysia on September 16, 1963, along with Sabah and Sarawak, after ending British colonial rule. Political and economic disagreements, including disputes between Singapore's People's Action Party and Malaysia's Alliance Party, strained the relationship. Tensions contributed to racial riots and political conflict in 1964. Singapore was ultimately expelled from Malaysia and became an independent country on August 9, 1965. Pulau Ubin. Pulau Ubin is an island northeast of mainland Singapore, known for its rural landscapes, forests, wetlands, and traditional village areas. Its name is commonly associated with the island's former granite quarrying industry, which operated there for much of the 20th century. Chek Jawa Wetlands is one of its best-known natural areas, containing mangroves, coastal habitats, and diverse wildlife. Unlike much of modern Singapore, Pulau Ubin retains a more rustic atmosphere with kampongs and relatively undeveloped roads and trails. Franklin Gimson. Franklin Charles Gimson was a British colonial administrator who served as the governor of the Straits Settlements from 1941 to 1942. He was in Singapore when Japanese forces invaded during World War II and became a prisoner of war after the fall of Singapore in February 1942. During the Japanese occupation, he was interned along with other British colonial officials. After the war, Gimson returned to Singapore and served again as governor from 1946 to 1952. S.R. Nathan. S.R. Nathan was a Singaporean civil servant and politician who served as the 6th President of Singapore from 1999 to 2011. Before becoming president, he held important positions in Singapore's diplomatic and security services, including serving as ambassador to the United States. He was also closely involved in Singapore's labour and intelligence administration during his earlier career. Nathan was the longest-serving president of Singapore, completing 2 6-year terms. Temasek. Temasek was an early name for the settlement that developed on the island now known as Singapore. The name appears in several historical sources, including Chinese records from the 14th century, and is generally associated with Singapore's role as a regional trading port. Temasek was connected to the wider maritime trading networks of Southeast Asia, linking merchants from places such as China, India, and the Malay world. By the late 14th century, the settlement became associated with Singapura, the name from which modern Singapore derives, Fort Canning. Fort Canning is a historic hill in central Singapore that has played an important role in the island's history. It is associated with the ancient settlement of Temasek and later became a site of Malay royal activity. The British built a fort on the hill in the 19th century, giving it the name Fort Canning. During World War II, the British military used the site as an important command center, and the British surrender of Singapore to Japan in 1942 was negotiated nearby. The fort was named after Charles Canning, who served as the Governor General and the first Viceroy of India from 1856 to 1862. Suk Ching Massacre. The Suk Ching Massacre was a mass killing carried out by the Japanese military in Singapore in 1942, shortly after the Japanese occupation began. Japanese authorities conducted screenings of the Chinese population, claiming they were identifying people considered hostile to Japanese rule. Many civilians were detained and killed, with estimates of the number of victims varying considerably among historical sources. The massacre was part of the wider repression and violence experienced by Singapore's population during the Japanese occupation. Sang Nila Utama. Sang Nila Utama is a legendary 13th century prince traditionally credited with founding Singapura, the settlement that later became Singapore. According to the Malay annals, he was a prince from Palembang who traveled to the island and saw an animal he believed to be a lion. He interpreted the encounter as an auspicious sign and named the settlement Singapura, meaning Lion City in Sanskrit. The historical accuracy of this story is uncertain, and the animal may not have actually been a lion. Bukit Chandu. Bukit Chandu is a historic hill in Singapore associated with the Battle of Pasir Panjang during World War II. In February 1942, soldiers of the Malay Regiment fought Japanese forces there as Japanese troops advanced towards Singapore. The defenders included Lieutenant Adnan Saidi, who became one of the most remembered figures of the battle. The fighting was intense, and the position was eventually captured by Japanese forces shortly before the British surrender of Singapore. Tony Tan. Tony Tan Keng Yam is a Singaporean politician and former president who served as the 7th president of Singapore from 2011 to 2017. Before becoming president, he held several senior government positions, including Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Defence, and Minister for Education. He was a prominent member of the People's Action Party during his political career. As president, he represented Singapore at official events and worked with the government on national issues. He was succeeded by Halimah Yacob in 2017. Operation Cold Store. Operation Cold Store was a major security operation carried out in Singapore on February 2, 1963, during the period of British colonial rule. Singapore's authorities, with British and Malaysian involvement, arrested more than 100 people accused of being involved in a communist conspiracy or associated with the underground left-wing movement. The operation targeted members and supporters of left-wing political organizations, including figures connected to Barisan Sosialis. Supporters of the arrests argued that they were necessary to address a genuine security threat, while critics argued that Cold Store was used to weaken political opposition before Singapore joined Malaysia. Benjamin Sheares. Benjamin Sheares was a Singaporean physician and the second president of Singapore, serving from 1971 to 1981. Before becoming president, he was a pioneering obstetrician and gynecologist who helped advance maternal healthcare in Singapore. He became president during a period of rapid economic development and national institution building. Although the presidency was largely ceremonial, Sheares represented Singapore at important national and diplomatic occasions. He died in office in 1981 and was succeeded by Chenggara Veto Devan Nair. The Hock Lee Bus Riots. The Hock Lee Bus Riots were violent labour protests in Singapore in 1955, involving workers of the Hock Lee Amalgamated Bus Company. The dispute began over working conditions, union recognition, and labour rights, and escalated into clashes between protesters and police. The unrest occurred during a period of growing labour and political activism as Singapore moved toward self-government. Several people were killed and many others were injured during the violence. Pedra Branca. Pedra Branca is a small rocky island located about 24 nautical miles east of Singapore. Its name means white rock in Portuguese, referring to the island's appearance. The island is best known for Iceberg Lighthouse, which was built by the British in the 19th century and began operating in 1851. Pedra Branca became the subject of a territorial dispute between Singapore and Malaysia, which was decided by the International Court of Justice in 2008, when sovereignty over the island was awarded to Singapore. Maria Hertog. Maria Hertog, also known as Maria Huberdina Hertog, was a Dutch girl whose custody case became a major controversy in Singapore in 1950. During World War II, she was raised by a Malay Muslim woman in Java and became known by the name Nadra bint Ma'aruf. A Dutch court later ruled that she should be returned to her biological parents, leading to a highly controversial custody dispute. The decision and related religious and cultural tensions contributed to the Maria Hertog riots in Singapore in December 1950, in which 18 people were killed and many others injured. The Hotel New World collapse. The Hotel New World collapse was a major building disaster in Singapore on March 15, 1986. The six-story building in the Little India area suddenly collapsed in less than a minute, trapping people inside. Rescue teams worked for days to search the rubble, and 33 people were killed, while 17 were rescued. Investigations found serious structural and construction problems, including errors in the building's original design calculations. Battle Box. The Battle Box is a former underground British military command centre beneath Fort Canning Hill in Singapore. It was used during World War II as the headquarters of the British Malaya Command. On February 15, 1942, senior British commanders met there before deciding to surrender Singapore to Japanese forces. The bunker was subsequently used during the Japanese occupation and later fell into disuse. The Labrador Battery. The Labrador Battery tunnels are a network of military tunnels and defensive structures beneath Labrador Park in Singapore. They were built as part of Britain's coastal defences to protect the approaches to Singapore's important harbour. The complex included ammunition storage, underground passages, and facilities supporting the Labrador Battery. During World War II, the area formed part of Singapore's defences against Japanese forces. Although the Japanese ultimately captured Singapore in 1942, the Marsiling Tunnels. The Marsiling Tunnels refer to a network of underground military facilities in the Marsiling area of Singapore, associated with Singapore's wartime and military history. Some of these structures were constructed or used during the British colonial period as part of the island's wider defense infrastructure. The tunnels and bunkers were designed to support military operations, communications, and storage. Many of the details about individual underground facilities are not widely documented publicly, and some sites remain inaccessible. Thomas Shenton. Sir Thomas Shenton was a British colonial administrator who served as the governor of the Straits Settlements from 1934 to 1942. He was the governor when Japanese forces invaded Malaya and captured Singapore during World War II. Thomas remained in Singapore during the fall of Singapore in February 1942 and was subsequently interned by the Japanese for the duration of the occupation. After the war, he retired from colonial service. Orang Bunyan. Orang Bunyan are supernatural beings from Malay folklore, especially associated with forests, mountains, and other secluded places in Southeast Asia. They are often described as resembling humans but living in an invisible or parallel realm alongside the human world. Traditional stories portray them as having their own communities, families, and societies, and some tales describe encounters or interactions between humans and Orang Bunyan. Beliefs about them vary across Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Brunei, and they are part of regional oral traditions rather than scientifically established beings. And that was the end of Singapore. Tune in next time for Lebanon. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.